From the News Channel 5 Network, this is SportsLine.
Hey there, SportsLine on your television. Steve Lehman here with you. Glad you are here with us on this Tuesday night on News Channel 5 Plus. Huge day in the NFL today. The ruling comes down from the commissioner's office. Roger Goodell and crew finally ruling on Deflategate. And they upheld the 4-game suspension for Patriots quarterback Tom Brady. And the huge revelation today is the fact that the NFL says that Brady destroyed his phone, his cell phone, on or right before the day he was supposed to meet with Ted Wells and NFL investigators about what happened in that AFC Championship game. Brady, for his part, says, I get a new phone every 4 months or so, always go through that process to just destroy the old one. Who knows about that, but certainly seems a bit suspicious when it comes right about the time that you're supposed to sit down with NFL investigators, and that is clearly what the NFL claims here, and basically turn this into a not so much that there's overwhelming evidence that you did this, but now there's overwhelming evidence that you refuse to cooperate with us. And that's a big deal to the NFL in light of Spygate. 7-8 years ago with the New England Patriots, Roger Goodell made it pretty clear at that point that if we're coming to ask you questions about fairness of play and things in the NFL, in the game, protecting the game, you need to work with us. You need to help us out and clear the air. Remember now, the NFL doesn't have the power of subpoena, so they can't go to the phone company and ask for all of Tom Brady's text messages to these guys, the equipment guys there. All they can do is hold over playing time, basically, or team fines, things like that. And so they need cooperation. And clearly, in this case, Tom Brady did not cooperate. And that essentially is what the NFL is throwing the book at him for, is not so much that we have all this evidence. It's really circumstantial at this point. It's not that they have overwhelming evidence that you absolutely did this or that you ordered this to happen. It is that we came to you asking you for all the information that we could get to help us paint the picture here, clear the air if we can, and you go and destroy your phone. How does that look? Not particularly good, and that is why Tom Brady still faces a 4-game suspension. And really, that is big news for the Patriots for obvious reasons. You're talking about a Super Bowl MVP on a team that's coming back from a Super Bowl championship. But also, think about this. I mean, he gets to go through the next month, training camp, preseason games, and all of that. Because the Patriots have a bye in week 4, it actually spans 5 weeks. And so the first time you would see Tom Brady on the field is mid-October, week 6, in a game against the Indianapolis Colts. That's a long time for anybody to sit out. And so how does Brady come back from that? And then there's the other ramifications here, too. The NFLPA said today that it was a, quote, outrageous decision and that they will vehemently fight any means necessary on Brady's behalf. So where does this end up? Probably in a courtroom, and we'll find out just how this all plays out, certainly over the next few weeks. It's already lasted a long time. I mean, think about it. The AFC Championship back in late January, and here we are practically the eve of August, certainly the eve of training camps in a lot of places around the NFL. The Patriots report tomorrow, and this is the story. We're going to get to your phone calls on the Deflategate suspension and the ruling today by the NFL coming up in just a little bit. But first tonight, I want to go to Jason Bonk, who is somebody who's an expert on this. Jason, you're going to have to help me out here. My notes got off on me. Who do you represent? What's your tie to the legal system?
Yeah, no problem. I practice sports law with the law firm of Cozen O'Connor in the New York office, and I guess I'm closely tied to the situation in multiple ways by virtue of both working in the sports world and the intersection of legal and sports issues, as well as being a Boston native, but I can be unbiased for these purposes.
Well, I guess first off, especially knowing that you're a Boston native, what is your initial reaction to the ruling today from the NFL to uphold the suspension?
It's interesting. I think you actually, as I understand it, you're not a lawyer.
I am not a lawyer.
So some very, very important points, namely that the Patriots, the first time you'd see Tom Brady on the field again if the suspension is upheld in a federal court, which it will get to, would be against the same team the Patriots were facing when this whole issue arose, and the basis of the expert scientific report that's attached to Ted Wells, whatever, 250, 300-page, gospel of Tom Brady was, quote, generally aware, which again is something you touched on. It's kind of almost serendipitous, a bit too fitting. I think that both sides have questions to answer. I mean, the NFL ran to the Southern District of New York to try to get some injunctive relief to enforce the decision that was put out today, with Goodell upholding, the suspension as is, even though the both sides, the NFLPA and the NFL, have been in talks for the last few days, right? After, at first, I guess some settlement offer which was probably 2 games or something, was met with silence, and they started talking. I'm sure Brady's camp in the PA and Brady's lawyer, who is an aggressive, successful lawyer for the PA, probably demanded on 0 or 1, because there are questions, and this is a primary argument that will happen in court. And I think that the argument is that the rule about inflation or deflation of footballs is applicable to club officials, not the players. So you've got the question there, right? And the NFL's initial investigation was conducted in a manner that was very one-sided. And I'm not saying Brady's right. And should he have destroyed the phone? Absolutely not. But if you've read parts of that Wells report, and you've read the text messages that were from from the crew who was inflating or deflating the balls, you saw text messages that could be interpreted in so many different ways. So when Tom Brady is asked in an investigation that is directed by the quote NFL, but it's really Goodell, offering the directive and commissioning Ted Wells and his team, the Paul Weiss, to go ahead and investigate however they deem appropriate, it's almost like Brady's back in a corner. And I can understand the desire for privacy when you don't, at that point, because you're subject to a collective bargaining agreement that the PA has agreed to, allow the NFL to sort of operate under, you're subject to basically not having a say. And at a principle or out of whatever else may have been on the phone, and then once the NFL said, okay, just give us what's relevant, what could have been subject to various interpretations. For example, if he said, keep my balls the way I want them, perhaps a bit inappropriate for public media, but you can interpret that in so many different ways, including in the way that the NFL chose to interpret the statement generally aware. Yeah,
Jason, I want to jump in real quickly there.
Sure.
Isn't a lot of people I've heard talk about this say they want to keep using the actual legal, I guess, criminal standard of evidence in this case and say, beyond the preponderance or more than the preponderance of evidence, beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was guilty. I don't think anybody can say that beyond a shadow of a doubt Tom Brady did this based off of the evidence, but when you look at the text messages and you see that he destroyed a phone and things like that, the NFL standard isn't the same as the criminal standard. Should it have to be the same as the criminal standard? I guess that's the real question to me, because they're clearly operating under a different standard that's basically saying it appears more likely than not, Tom, that you had something to do with this, and that's breaking the rules of our game, therefore here's the suspension. Should the NFL be held to a higher standard, more like the criminal court?
Well, That's a great point too, and I'll make it more complex by adding in the civil component as related to the destroyed cell phone, right? So let's talk NFL. They're looking at, just like you say, it appears more probable than not.
Right.
So they're saying 51-49, we're going to take that as gospel, and we're going to suspend you 4 games. And then when you don't cooperate in the way we wanted you to cooperate in the investigation that we commissioned on our own terms and conditions, and then we also decided to hear the appeal by the same person that commissioned the investigation, and you didn't work with us to sort of split the baby, so to speak, we're going to then say that 51-49 was enough. And you did this. You're not innocent until proven guilty. Is that the criminal standard? Of course not. And is that the civil standard with respect to the cell phone? No. The civil standard in terms of destruction of evidence is, first of all, that did not happen in the course of a formal litigation. If that happened once any litigation that is forthcoming happens, that would be a different story. No witness can sort of maintain credibility after destroying evidence.
Sure.
But this happened at a time when Brady may have felt completely pushed and pushed and pushed. And as you suggested earlier, the NFL has had so many issues off field. What better opportunity to make a point than to take America's pretty boy, who is, as successful as quarterbacks come in the last decade, and I say that objectively. I think that's fair. I think that's my bias near the Patriots, because I think Bill Belichick is frankly the genius behind their success. But they take America's pretty boy, who's married to a Gold Star model, and they want to make a point to say they're going to fight. But at the same time, the NFLPA, just like they have in Minneapolis, which is where they will probably try to take this suit into federal court, they've been successful. For example, Peterson, right? They want to make a statement, and they want to say you can't just apply these rules arbitrarily and at your own discretion without any say by the NFLPA. The NFLPA has to take action. They have nothing to lose, right?
Right. So here's my question. Based off all those other NFL, I guess scandals is the best word you can put on, Ray Rice and Greg Hardy, and go on and on and on down the list that we've seen, the NFL and Roger Goodell has taken heat on how he has at times arbitrarily handed out punishment and just the way it's all happened. Exactly. He needed to make a statement in this case. Do you think that's what he was trying to do? I mean, do you think this ruling is making a statement, or do you think this is just the way it would go?
Well, if you look at the course of action, if you look at Bob Kraft, for example, several weeks ago, because as you mentioned, this has dragged on quite a bit. And at first it was, there's no timeline for a decision. Then suddenly they were offering some sort of settlement of sorts, as the NFL called it. But you look at Bob Kraft's statement saying, we're not going to object to what the NFL has ruled because we want everything to be for the greater good of the league. And that screams to me anyway, as a sports fan, as a football fan, as a fan of one of America's 2 biggest pastimes probably, arguably anyway. I guess you could throw the NHL in there, you could throw basketball in there, but those span a bit wider. It screams to me that what's happening here is the NFL is recognizing the examples you just pointed out, the off-field conduct, the off-field conduct having to do with multiple factors, race, sexual preference, gender respect, and sort of equality issues, and recognizing that, okay, this is an industry, it's a business at bottom, the league is, and it's an incredibly successful one. And Roger Goodell is incredibly successful and has done a tremendous job for the NFL as an entity. But what better time than now to sort of make a statement? And as an owner of one of the teams of the league, Kraft's position to not take a statement and not do anything makes sense, especially when he's got a guy who just got convicted for murder in Aaron Hernandez. And we're talking about a 4-game suspension here, right? And Kraft took the stand in Hernandez's trial, and I don't think Kraft did anything wrong by any stretch in his testimony or otherwise. But I'm just saying it's a sensitive situation, sure, and one where the team, as a member team of the league, has an interest in preserving the integrity of the league. And so I do think there's a component of, if that settlement said, the settlement offer that's been discussed said, okay, Tom, take 3 games, take 2 games. And, of course, Tom's lawyers and the PA, and his lawyer's an aggressive one, and one that has had success in the past defending the NFLPA and players, is saying 0 games because it shouldn't be applied to Tom as a general matter. Discussions are going to break down. So it's not surprising at all that this is happening.
Jason Bonk, Cozen O'Connor lawyer, joining us here on SportsLine, and I talking about the Tom Brady decision this afternoon. Roger Goodell had to make a statement. He made a statement today. It is a 4-game suspension. Now this probably winds up in the courts, right? And where, Jason?
Well, that's the best question, because the NFL ran down to the Southern District of New York to try to get an injunction to enforce Goodell's ruling on the appeal. And they did that partially, probably out of a bit of defensiveness, given that they're dealing with a lot of factors from the initial stages of the investigation and how different actors, Goodell in particular, kind of played multiple roles and arguably improperly, especially when it came time for the appeal, which we all know about. That's public knowledge. But also to keep us out of Minneapolis, because that's where the NFLPA has had most of its success. And so there's going to be procedural issues. The injunction is unlikely to be granted, in my view, because there are issues to be decided here, given the underlying facts, which are in the public eye, at least a lot of them, enough to deny, any sort of preemptive strike that the NFL is trying to initiate by going to the Southern District of New York. Now, whether the NFLPA and the legal team backing Brady and the Players Association is able to get this to Minneapolis is up in the air. I mean,
what do they have to do? I mean, so even if the injunction gets struck down and the NFL doesn't basically get confirmation of this ruling today, which is what they're looking for by going to the Southern District of New York, what does the Brady camp have to do in New York to, I guess, win that battle and then put themselves out, the free agent market of courtrooms, so to speak, to then try and get it to Minnesota, where ultimately they would probably have their best chance at success?
Well, right. I mean, logically, one might think it might fall into either a New York federal court or a Massachusetts federal court, given the players here, right? But both the team and the league have ties to every state. And the Players Association has ties to every state. And this would be the Players Association bringing the case on behalf of Brady. So it wouldn't necessarily be a Brady tie, meaning if it's the Players Association, you've got what's called diversity jurisdiction from a legal perspective, pretty much in any state. And so you've got that federal jurisdiction. You're really, there's no prohibition. So presumptively, if the injunction doesn't go through, or what I'm calling an injunction, it's really like a preemptive strike to basically get reinforcement of the NFL's appeals ruling, which would be the court sort of it's as if Roger Goodell was a judge too. And I don't know which judge it's before. I haven't heard yet. And I don't know if the judge has been assigned. But if that gets denied, which in my best guess it would, then it becomes the choice basically of the NFLPA legal team / Brady legal team, because they're one and the same, to bring the action where they so choose. Okay,
so if they do that, you think that's likely to happen? It's going to fall in their court. Wherever it ends up, best guess, what happens? I mean, are we likely to see something happen in the court that changes the suspension, or is Brady out for 4 games and not playing until mid-October?
So a federal judge, let's put aside the venue, right? Let's put aside the jurisdiction, and because it will fall in the wheelhouse of the Brady / NFLPA team. That's where they file any suit, because they would be the plaintiffs in the suit, and it was preemptive attempt by the NFL to go run to the Southern District. So what would happen is a judge could basically take that finding from an internal tribunal adjudication system within a league that is a business, and either accept it, uphold it, and deny it. Or it could be likely that in many, as is the case in many federal litigations, and plenty of that I've been involved in, a judge would sort of either forcefully or by use of a magistrate judge or something, facilitate and strongly encourage the parties to take an hour, sit down, and work it out. When I say an hour usually means 10, but you get what I'm saying. Like a judge can't make the decision to split the baby here. Can't make the decision, okay, this is the number of games. The judge can uphold the suspension as it is now, which is 4 games. It can deny the finding in the NFL, in which case Tom Brady is on cloud 9, as are the Patriots, as is the NFLPA.
Right.
But can strongly encourage a constructive discussion that results in a resolution everybody's happy with.
That would be very interesting. It's been a fascinating case all the way through. Jason Bonk from Cozen O'Connor Sports Law out of New York. We appreciate your time tonight, Jason. Great stuff. And, for your sake, I hope you see number 12 out there on the field sometime soon.
I appreciate that. Who are you a fan of?
Well, I live here in Nashville, so I probably better say the Titans right now, and they're obviously getting ready for training camp with their own quarterback here in a couple days. But, Jason, we appreciate the time tonight, and have a wonderful night. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, sounds great. Happy to chat. It's been fun.
Yep, Jason Bonk from Cozen O'Connor in New York. We got to take our first break. We're running behind tonight. Up next, though, phone lines are open. Your thoughts on what you just heard from Jason. Your thoughts on the appeal today being denied by the NFL. Tom Brady suspended at least for a few more days for 4 games. We'll see what happens in the courts now. 737-7767 is the number. Phone lines wide open. We get to you guys coming up next here on SportsLine.